email that you mentioned that you found it very helpful when Ajahn was talking about pariyatti or layers of pariyatti. Would you like to explain more what you found helpful?
Oh, hard to say. I think part of it being that Ajahn continually brought it back to now. And you know, what appears now with more understanding will change, but the important thing is what appears now and understanding it, or there will be no change. There can't be increased understanding and moving forward. I shouldn't even say moving forward. They're just understanding won't develop further or accumulate more without knowing and realizing that it is now.
Yes, I agree. It has. One time a friend said I stress now too much, but it has to be now, because otherwise it's just theory in the book, just details that are studied and remembered. If it's not related to now, and as you say, understanding cannot develop unless it's relevant to daily life, relevant to this moment. Like mana, we can talk about different kinds of mana, but if there's no understanding of the characteristic when it appears, it's never actually known. It's just a story about it. So we have to hear about it in the beginning, but that characteristic has to be known, as you say, Tom, otherwise it's just thinking about it.
Right.
So,
you know, and at the same time, you know, the early stages of pariyatti understanding, one is going to think about the story around the various aspects of Dhamma that we learn. And it's sort of when understanding, hone in on the fact that it's all happening now, that it's nowhere else other than now. That's the curtain that shields it all from us, and slowly it will open to us. But yeah, I think we've talked about this a lot. It's always refreshing and useful, I think, to hear about various aspects, and Ajahn weaves it all together so beautifully.
And I think the point is that when it's a sort of a story about those realities far, far away from now, it's questionable whether it is actually pariyatti understanding, or whether it's just like studying a scientific textbook or any other textbook, because you can just be clinging to the story without any understanding. And we know it's quite easy to study the Abhidhamma, to study the suttas without any understanding. So it has to come back to this moment and to understand what appears as Dhamma, as anatta.
As Ajahn says, it's here, it's right here.
It's here, it's now, yes. I think that in that discussion you mentioned what Ajahn was actually referring to were the rounds of understanding of the Noble Truths, how it is the firm pariyatti understanding that conditions a direct understanding rather than layers of pariyatti, but the firm intellectual understanding which is necessary to condition the direct understanding,
I
which
think
is necessary to condition the realization.
Right, and I think I hear exactly what you're saying, and that's what I was referring to, although I wasn't pulling up the right language.
Yes.
For sure. It was very helpful. Okay. Oh, Alberto, you are here. The transcriptions, Alberto, are wonderful. To go back and read what we heard. And have a chance to take it in from
Yeah,
reading.
thank you, Anne. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they're very useful for me to listen very attentively and listen again and again.
Well, I'm sure many people find it very helpful. All of them.
And I think there has to always be the considering and questioning, no matter whether it's what Ajahn has said, no matter it's what the Buddha has said in the book, not just believing it because it's what the Buddha said or because it's what Ajahn said. So, for example, when she talks about layers of pariyatti, one has to, that's why I was asking, one has to question and consider, and sometimes it's easy to misunderstand, or sometimes people, as like Ajahn always says, can make mistakes. So one always has to question and reflect. And on Saturday, Lucas joined. I don't think he's here now, but he was talking about Paratagosa and Yoniso Manasikara. There has to be the hearing of what is beneficial. This can be reading in the book, it can be hearing in a discussion, can be any source at all, but the important part is the wise attention, the wise considering, because it also in the suttas talks about the hearing of the teachings and unwise attention. So it all comes back to, like when we talk about Sutta Maya Panya, Chinta Maya Panya, there has to be the understanding of what is heard to condition the further considering and the development of understanding. So I appreciate the opportunity to discuss and question no matter what the source, because it has to be one's own understanding in the end.
Because surely if one hasn't heard it before, well, maybe in other lives, but there are questions. There are questions.
And one may have heard something wrong, or something may have been said that is wrong, or there may be a different interpretation or translation of the sutta. So there always has to be the questioning and reflecting and not just assuming something is right.
Just a minute ago, Sarah, you talked about the rounds, the 4 rounds. Can you explain more about that?
The 3 rounds. So the 3 rounds of the 4 noble truths refer to the wise understanding of the truth, the wise pariyatti, the firm pariyatti of dukkha and the nature of dukkha, which is here and now, seeing now. It arises and it's gone instantly. It's unsatisfactory. So as you mentioned before, there has to be the reflecting about what has been heard, but it's still right from the beginning has to be relevant to now.
Yes.
And the same with the other noble truths, the cause, the path, the cessation, it's the wise reflecting. And only this can condition the second round of the 4 noble truths, the Kitchanyana. The first is the Satchanyana, second is the Kitchanyana, the direct understanding of the 4 noble truths. Without the wise reflecting about seeing now as dukkha, there can never be the direct understanding of it. And this conditions the 3rd round, Katanyana, the development of insight, the vipassana jnanas and realization of the truths, right up to enlightenment.
Yes, and Satchanyana, is Satchanyana and pariyatti understanding similar?
It is.
Same?
Yes. So satcha is truth. So satcha, so it's understanding of the truth. But the way I understand it, it refers to the firm understanding, firm intellectual understanding of the truths. And right from the very first sutta the Buddha taught, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the turning of the wheel sutta, he is referring to the understanding of the 4 noble truths and the 3 rounds, understanding the realities intellectually in the beginning as as anatta from the very start. So it's not just something that we hear about, but it's the Buddha pointed out about the three rounds from the start. Yes.
I was thinking when we talk, and we've been hearing now for a long, long time. Ajahn has always stressed now, I think more so perhaps now, even more so now. But now suddenly, I think the more and more you think about it, the more and more it becomes clear is now it means like right now, at this moment, this is all occurring.
And as an example of how there has to be the questioning of everything one hears, even what Ajahn says or what one reads. I was listening to an old tape which was discussing about sila. And on this tape, the discussion was all about sila in terms of speech and deeds. But we now know and discuss how it has to be referring to the nature of the citta, because if we're just thinking about speech, but what's important is the citta that motivates the speech and deeds. And otherwise we're just looking or talking about a situation again. So I thought it's helpful, and one has an example of why one has to just keep questioning until it's clear and the confidence is firm. So yes, it's a good topic.
Yeah, for sure.
Alberto, anything else you would like to add before we pass it to Ajahn?
Yeah, can I just ask you, Sarah, what level of pariyatti is Satchanyana? Because we're saying that Satchanyana is not only pariyatti. Yeah, I agree.
It is pariyatti, but it has to be firm pariyatti. There has to be confidence of the truth, not just thinking about it, seeing now and visible object that's seen, but there has to be firm confidence with the understanding to condition, direct understanding of the truths, of the reality appearing as Dhamma, not self. But I think it's a good topic for Ajahn to address further.
Thank you.
I think that it's impossible to have more understanding if there is no discussion, no reading, considering about just what would have taught. Because in order to understand the Dhamma, the first thing is to understand it. All Dhammas are so very subtle. That's why even now we are talking about the First Noble Truth, the arising and falling of whatever is now appearing. It's only having more confidence by hearing again and again and again about now, because how subtle it is, even it's right now, it's not known, but it can be gradually known about the truth of what is there. As the seeing is not that which appears. That's why this is the understanding of the truth. When it's firm enough, no doubt about at moment of touching, seeing, thinking, watching TV or any moment, citta, the reality, which is the chief, is there. But usually there's no attention to the characteristic of that which is the chief. But so many thought about what is seen and heard and so on, they're sorry, carried far away from understand this moment. That's why learning to understand the truth is the first level, the first round of the Four Noble Truths. So very, very subtle, even the first one. But understanding firmly that what is there now is conditioned, can let go the idea of trying to do something to have more understanding. Try so hard to read about that and that. But in truth, it's the understanding of the subtlety of just one word about one reality. For example, we used to think about seeing. Okay, that it's now seen. But the nature, the reality which experiences the object which is seen never show up if there is no understanding of the first round of it. To know the subtlety of even the first noble truth is there now, arising and falling away, and no understanding of it at the degree of directly understand the moment when it's there yet. That's why I have confidence of this. No trying, no thought about how can we get to that point so soon and on and on. It's letting go. The I, little by little, no one can do anything. And this is the point of all dhammas are anatta, not anyone, no one, nothing at all. It's just there when it appears. Just hearing again, listening again, considering again, little by little. Who knows that that is the fourth noble truth, the first round, understanding the way to understand it better and clearer and more and more and more, little by little. Unknowingly, who knows how much understanding now develops from moment to moment. But from what we are talking about, everyone has more confidence of the truth to understand the fourth truth at level of intellectual understanding. So it conditioned moment of not going wrong of the truth of what is heard as what is there as Buddha taught, more and a little more clearer and clearer about even the meaning of what is there as it is. So the letting go is so very, very subtle. Who knows how much is there accumulated eons and eons, uncountable eons. So how can it appear when we talk about it? Just talk about it, but no more considering about the truth by conditions. If there's no hearing, considering, and understanding at all, it's just on the surface, just the word about the truth, that's all. Like now, seeing is there conditioned. It arises and ceases, and then it falls away. From moment to moment, piti citta, different piti citta, conditions such, nimitta, and so on. Let's talk about it. But it's time to understand the subtlety. And the understanding of the subtlety of all dhammas is the only way to let go attachment, ignorance, and try to understand better, clearer, without any understanding developed at all. That's why there can be moments of hearing, considering, understanding, and then at the moment, instantly by conditions, to have thought about such and such, not about that which is now appearing. And this is the way to understand the truth better and better, deeper and deeper, that it has to be this way, no other way at all. That's why it's right to be free from ignorance little by little at stage of understanding the truth that has to develop by hearing, considering, understanding little by little. When it is conditioned to be such moments right now, it's not just seeing, there's hearing, there's thinking, there's attachment, there is so many different reality there, unknown because there's rapidity of the arising and falling away. But it has to be like this. It has to be a little understanding, but so through firmer and firmer about the truth, little by little. So life goes on freely from being influenced by ignorance and attachment, try to change it, to have it more, but to understand whatever is there by conditions. Begin to have firm confidence of anatta more and more and more. See, and this is so natural. Like today, and every time we meet, we have met, and we will meet again. Anytime it's on conditioned. So in truth, only right understanding can understand the truth. Actually, there's no thing, no one at all. Only different conditioned realities arising and falling away. And the source of the world is moment of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, conditioned such different thinking. Otherwise, how can there be thinking without seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching of that which appears and then gone, but no understanding of the way Dhamma is? That's why just have right confidence of the Four Noble Truths stage by stage. And we have talked about many, many different ways or aspects of all dhammas by way of ayatana or patismupada and so on. But talking about the moment of the development of the path very secretly, very subtly, can condition moment of direct understanding of what is there. As we say, now seeing, or now touching, or now hearing, or now hardness, or now taste, and so on. In life, so natural, the only way. So it's just moments in life, different moments by condition, moment of talking, discussing on Dhamma, moment of thinking about going somewhere, moment and thinking about such and such, by conditions. So natural. It seems that the followers of the Buddhas in the Buddha's time didn't do anything at all. They just lived naturally. But what about the understanding here from hearing and considering the truth from the Buddha? Each one is different, but so natural. It develops its way. And the moment of directly understand, even that which now appears as hardness is the result or Paccappanna of the Paccaya, Pakatupanissaya, and other Paccaya. See, by conditions, even that in life all around unknown until just a moment from hearing, considering, and understanding the anatterness of all kinds of Dhamma. The moment of directly aware with understanding of hardness, see, never before. No matter it is hardness or sound or whisper object or whatever, unexpectedly. That's why those followers of the Buddha, even in the Buddha's time, have different objects of experiences with right understanding at different levels by conditions. Firm confidence of the first round, condition the moment of anatta to arise, to appear as just instantly, suddenly, by conditions, unexpectedly, what would be the object of understanding? Because the understand all about them, like about what is seen and the seeing and so on. That's why hearing again and again and again, condition a little more understanding. From moment to moment now, when there is right understanding of this, is the path, condition, moment of understanding directly, and then gone, depending on how much understanding is there. That's why all depends on conditions. Understanding naturally, like now, is conditioned for unexpected direct understanding of what object unexpectedly by conditions. So the truth is that even what is said now, how much understanding of that is, the subtlety of that which arises and falls away cannot be realized without letting go of ignorance of that which appears as something or I gradually, so very little at a time, comparing to the accumulation of wrong understanding and ignorance and attachment in years and years' life. It has to be like this. That's why, no doubt about the Kanti Parami, or Viriya Parami, or Satya Parami, Nekama Parami, Adidana Parami, now, see, develop gradually each moment of understanding the truth of what is there. Because it's there, and it's the beginning of understanding the nature of it, and begin again and again understanding that which appears by conditions. So there can be a moment of attachment or wrong understanding, but right understanding is sharp enough to understand that it's just a reality. And this is the way the path keep on developing gradually until right now what appears as something can appear as it is, not as anything at all. And this is firm confidence of the first round of the Four Noble Truth. We have talked about the first Ariya Satya, the second, the third, and now the path is so very subtle, so natural. That's why right understanding can understand whatever is there. Otherwise, wrong understanding cannot be absolutely eradicated. As long as there is doubt about what is there in life, or no understanding, no direct understanding at that moment, that it's just there, a moment, and then gone. Even touching now, it can be the understanding developing little by little. It's there when it's direct understanding and then gone. Even it does not show up so clear as Vipassana Jnana, but the truth is that it has to be that understanding which begins to understand what appears so short and then other object appears. To understand it, that is the way it is. No change, but understanding develops a little, more and more. Until at that very moment, the understanding of that object is different from intellectual understanding. So by then, there is the understanding of no one, but it's the accumulation of panya from moment to moment developed until it conditions such moment not at will, unexpectedly, by conditions, anatta appears a little clearer. No thought about it, but then it is just like now. No thought about next moment to be sound or sight or smell or what, but it's there by conditions. So right understanding of daily life begins to begin to develop little by little. Sometimes it's only just thinking about it, because we heard a lot from this book and from that and on and on. But the moment of thinking about it is conditioned to think, to consider a little more clearer and clearer. Like Sarah just said, from this point to other point until all conform as the truth. And that moment is the development of understanding. Even at moment of thinking, it does not think about other thing, but it thinks about the truth. That's why in life, who knows? It's only at moment of direct understanding or just considering what is there that we have heard about it like this and that. Or think about Paticca Samuppada by way get clearer and clearer understanding. And right understanding knows that is what level, what round of the Four Noble Truth. So natural. That's why I consider just any word which we have come across, no matter it's sila, as the nature of citta and so on, and what is there, like open up the citta to be known and so on. When there is understanding of the truth of reality, it can develop to understand the meaning of that word. Why it's citta, which has to be opened up. Because now it's there. But what appears is not the citta, but it's that which is experienced by citta. So we learn about different cittas, not just in the book, but at birth, the object of citta does not appear, and the next moment, conditioned by the same karma. So it performs different function. The first moment in life, the citta performs the function of being the first, patisanti. Pati is particularly, and santi is continue instantly. When death gone, the moment of death gone, it's there by conditions. Who can expect what would be next life, depending on one karma, whether how long the life is, depending on conditions, the karma, strong or less, all in life are conditioned. This is the way to let go wrong understanding, and this is the path, right understanding of 3 rounds. Otherwise, how can that which now arising and falling away, just one nimitta of one reality can be known? So it's so natural, and we can talk about the citta at moment of patisanti and pavanka by words. We understand now what we mean. No condition for citta to experience other object at all. It has to be that object before death of last life, unknown in this life, not because it's not through 6 doorways. No condition to experience the world of this life yet, until the moment of the world appears, but no understanding that it's no one. It's the way Dhamma is from moment to moment. What would be next after Pavanka and so on. Even the mind process, see, who can stop it? The accumulation of how much experiences from life to life, years and years ago, are there accumulated. And when time comes, it's a moment of vitakka to touch it. So it experiences what is there by vitakka, which is by conditions, or by conditions each moment. That's why we learn to understand little by little about the truth, about whatever is now. Can citta arise by itself or by someone? What kind of citta can arise by someone? Condition it, or by what? That's why consider again about what has been heard about the truth. Again and again and again, different aspect, different level of pariyati, from the first satya to the second, to the third, and then to the fourth. Now, the only way. And at moment, who knows that it's free from being influenced by, to be slave of ignorance and attachment. So very heavy, but not known how heavy it is, of living along with attachment and ignorance, and to be freed from that little by little, not to be enslaved to ignorance and attachment, to have more understanding, to do this and that, but to understand what is there now. It's there already. No need to try to have anything arise at all. And understand different characteristics of reality, what we have learned about attachment, ignorance, and right understanding. They are there, not the word, but the truth of each one. And at moment of understanding, it's a kind of reality. We can use the term panya or vicha or whatever, but it understands as the other one, opposite. It cannot understand. It does not understand, but it now understands different realities.
So Alberto and Anne, I think that in the transcript Alberto gave about when Ajahn was was talking about degrees of pariyatti, actually what she was referring to was the 3 rounds of the Four Noble Truths, and particularly the first round, what she was actually referring to were the aspects of the pariyatti understanding with regard to the Four Noble Truths. So I think degrees was actually what was meant was the different aspects, the understanding of the first noble truth, second, third, and fourth. And another point with regard to your question, Alberto, and the Satchanyana, I think there was a good example on Saturday when our friend mentioned that there isn't enough study of the teachings, or there's a lot of negative, bad thinking about different topics that are useless, and there's depression and this and that. But actually the test of the understanding is at each moment, because what arises now can't be changed. No one can do anything at all, nothing to be done. So the test of the understanding and confidence is always now, no matter whether there's depression or happiness, whether there's this situation or that, because they're still just different realities. So when the going is tough, is there the thought, the idea of what can I do? How can I change it? If so, it's not the Satchanyana. So the Satchanyana is the firm confidence in understanding the truth, no matter what it is, no matter whether it's what one likes or doesn't like. It's just how it is. It's conditioned and it's anatta. So that's Satchanyana. Very firm to just understanding what appears just as it is, no matter one's sick or healthy or rich or poor or happy or sad. Reality, the seeing, the hearing, the pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, whatever it is, it's just as it is. So I think it's a good example for all of us.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And Ajahn, thank you very much. It's actually so easy to move into excuses about why I might feel depressed or why I might feel tired or whatever. Well, it's this, it's that, I did this, I did that, somebody else did that. That's not understanding at all.
And if this was different, then there would be more study of the teachings.
Right.
But the study is now at the moment of the depression, at the moment of being sick, at the moment of unhappiness. It's now. The Dhamma is not in the book. It's not a matter of how long one is listening to the recording or what book is open, but what about the seeing now, the unhappy feeling now? And it's gone instantly. It's anatta. And that's the confidence in the Dhamma, the Satchanyana that conditions the direct understanding, the firm confidence that it's anatta and gone, conditioned just the way it is. Not anyone's fault or not anything to be done at all. Like Ajahn said, it was a good example, the monks in the Buddha's time, they just lived their life normally, naturally, nothing to be done. But they all had different accumulations, so different interests, different objects of understanding, different realities arising moment to moment, nothing collective, as a friend mentioned yesterday. Just exactly how it is. Some were very elderly and sick, some were young and healthy, but seeing is seeing, hearing is hearing, the feeling is just feeling, each one gone. Any other comments, Alberto, on any of these points?
A good point to remind about the present moment. The test, as you say, of the understanding is not being carried away by thinking and stories and situations, and because they are not there anyway, so why thinking about it?
And even if there is thinking about it, thinking about the different stories, situations, then the thinking can be known. The thinking is a reality, it's conditioned, not anyone who's thinking like this. And it has to be like that. There has to be the carried away, the thinking about different stories. But it's just a moment of thinking and gone, seeing, hearing, gone, just the way it is. No one can stop thinking about different stories and situations. And if one would like to, or thinks it should be different, it's the clinging and the expecting that comes in again, conditioning the depression when it's the way it is.
Those moments of considering now are such a relief. And that's, you can be burrowed in something that's bothering you. And, if there are conditions for the thoughts, thinking to arise, that considers, wait a minute, this is, again, it's the story of what's happened, but it's the story of what's happening now. And I think the story of what's happening now is so important.
And there can be the understanding, it's just thinking, just moments of thinking.
Yes. Yep.
Not trying to stop the thinking, not trying to change it at all.
We make a little more room for the reality, little by little, until what usually was occupied with thinking about stories and situations is replaced by the actual reality, by the facts. Less fiction and more fact.
I'm not sure that it's replaced. I think the thinking about the stories and situation carries on, but understanding can pop in even whilst thinking like that, like even whilst thinking about our friends on the screen or the weather or whatever. There can be moments of understanding, but it doesn't mean the thinking about the stories comes to an end. And if there's an expectation that it does, it's going to cause problems because the thinking carries on. It's always thinking about this and that, but there can be understanding of what the truth is, even at those times, even at this time now. Like even while I'm talking to you, I'm thinking about, I wonder if Alberto has recognized I'm wearing the shirt he gave me, even whilst talking about dhammas. So it's daily life, it's natural, no need to change the thinking or consider it should be replaced. It's just this moment. Very daily life. How are you today, Betty? Do you have any topic or question or anything you would like to bring up today?
No, I'm just listening, and I'm always thinking how you know, that there be more conditions to spread this to others, you know, for me to be able to explain it better to others. So that's my usually what I'm thinking about. How can I explain this better? Because it's Dhamma is so wonderful. I can't, and yet I hear so much michatiti around me that I want to be able to explain it. So when I understand it a little bit better each time, I think maybe I can explain it better.
It all depends on the, like in the example of the hearing and considering and the wise attention. Yes. So even if someone hears a little more about the truth, it depends whether there's interest and wise considering, wise attention to what is heard, or by conditions. One cannot make someone else interested.
No, I can't. That's true. And they think in terms of I all the time, because they say, oh, I've got to be doing something. I've got to be meditating. I've got to be doing this. I all the time. And they don't see it. They don't understand when you try to explain about condition. There's no control over it. There's no you to control. And they say, Mom, that's just theory. And I said, well, that's stomach. So, and you know, I've seen it happen in my own life. Test that the path is so very true, wonderful. So,
because they think of pati as practice, as doing something, as changing, like if one's feeling down and depressed, of doing something to snap out of it and changing this
is true in
situation.
The language. Pati means literally, it means practice, doing, you know, a training. So in the Thai language, so they think in terms of, they hear the word pati and they automatically think of the Thai definition of that word. So this is a problem. If we can get the people who deal with language to change the meaning, the everyday meaning of pati, that might have but yeah, this is the thing. But I know I can't change them. All I know is I can make I can read and listen and think, and I do a lot more thinking than I do about reading things. So and think about Dhamma, how I see it operating in everyday life, how I see the characteristics of reality being understood at deeper and deeper levels, anatta at a deeper level, or dukkha at a deeper level, or excuse me, you know, all of the three characteristics, or anicca, impermanence, at a deeper level. And it seems like there's always a lesson where that can be seen. Anyone at any time, it just happens.
It just depends on conditions whether those you associate would like to hear and consider more or not.
Yeah.
Or whether they prefer to just cling to their idea of practice and changing the situation, because the desire to be in control and to change the situation is so strong.
This is true. The idea that there's no control is really upsetting to some people. You know, what? There's no need to control. Ah. And now your books are finally published in Bangkok.
Yes, thank you, Betty.
So I'm waiting for Pete to send me two copies, so I can.
Yes, I think you can have as many copies as you like.
I mean, just now he's going to send me from the foundation when the printing is finished.
Yes, I heard that it's finished. Yes, good.
So that's good.
What is the book, Sarah?
It's Dhamma Now, and it's actually the first part that was in the book that I wrote together with Nina. It's actually based on the Zoom discussions, but I've edited and changed and added more quotes. And in Thailand, they have printed this book. It's just a very small book. So when you're in Thailand, you can pick up a copy, and Alberto too, and anyone else. And I think if anyone's not going, the foundation can send copies to them. And then I'm working on the second volume and the third volume. Yes.
If anybody would like to, if you have no plans to go to Thailand in the near future, just write something in the comments section, in this. In the chat section, and I'll tell them to give me your home addresses and stuff, and I have them if they haven't changed, and I'll tell them to send you copies.
Great. Thanks, Betty. That's very helpful. And Azita, do you have any questions or anything you would like to ask Ajahn today?
Yes, a while ago, Ajahn spoke of Pati Santi and Pati, and I missed it, but I think it's the Pati, the first bit, Pati, and I didn't quite catch it. So what does the Pati and Pati Santi and Pati mean, Ka?
Only the word Pati is particular or particularly. So now when it is Pati, particular object, attained with right understanding, because now there are so many realities around and we talk about them, but not directly understand even just one. So at level of Pati is particular and Pati is attained or reached. So at moment of reaching that object directly with understanding is Pati, only particular object, that one, only that one. And Pati just reach or attain the truth of it, direct awareness. Now, of whatever is there. It's particular object only, one at a time, with understanding. Otherwise, how can it is aware of such object? Because now so many objects without any understanding. Can there be moment of directly understand just one object at a time? So, pati santi is like continue or arise after. So, pati santi, after death has the moment of death, the citta which performs that function has fallen away. The next one has to be only that which perform the function of patisanti next to death moment. Pati, seeing cannot arise after death, hearing cannot arise after death, kusala cannot arise after death, only that vipaka has to arise after death instantly, no gap at all. Now, what arises after seeing? Only that which is sampatichana, only that, not other. Pati and pati. Now, there's no understanding of the object directly yet. So, there cannot be pati and pati. But when there is the understanding of whatever is there, it is pati, pati, or pati, just reach the object with understanding.
Thank you, Ajahn. That's made it a lot clearer. Just it is just that. It can't be anything else. Pati, the first pati. It can't be anything else. It is just that. Is that how I would explain it in English?
I don't know other language, only Thai and some Pali words. And when I heard any Pali words, I would like to understand the word and the meaning of it too, like pati and pati. Sota pati. Maka. See?
What was that, Ajahn? Pati maga, meaning reaching.
The stage of Sotapanna.
Oh, okay. Right. Understood. Okay. Wonderful. And one other thing regarding, it seems lately you talk a lot of the reality that experiences, and I find it really, really beneficial. And I heard the other day on one of the talks, Jitta can experience anything, and even Nibbana. And I, of course, that's understood, but it surprised me when I heard that. Well, it surprised me in a good way. But no, quite have forgotten what I was going to. Yes, it's just I'm appreciating listening to the experience, the experiencer, which is Jitta, because it just goes on and on and on, arising and falling, arising and falling. And as we've been reminded, it's unknown. We know lopa, we know good feeling, bad feeling, we know intellectually, but the Jitta is just not known. And is it the Jitta that we take as I, me?
Therefore, Namakhandas is I, and the Rupa, that which belong to me.
Right, yes. Yes, all five khandas at some point I think of as me. But as I said, I'm very much appreciating the reminders of the experiencer of realities.
So much more to learn about what is there in order to reach the truth, which is so very deep, very subtle.
It seems like it gets deeper each time I listen.
That is panya, which knows and let go attachment to attain the truth without understanding enough to attain it.
Yes, it's definitely very subtle and a very difficult path, but there is no one to travel this path, so there's nothing that one can do, just as we've talked about before in this discussion, just being aware of whatever arises now, right now. And
But
instead of
can there be a moment of direct awareness or understanding?
there can be,
That's
but not
do we have to think about that stage without any understanding of what is there now, little by little?
Yes, I think if we hadn't heard these words, we would never know that the realities arise and fall. That, well, the Buddha's words are very, very wonderful.
If there is such idea, it's just trying to reach the Aruba Brahma, see? Or touch the Aruba Brahman, or to know, see, what about very close reality right now? It's there.
Yes, Achan, right here, right now.
If it's not known as it is, the self is there each moment of experiencing an object, no matter by way of the chief or attachment or vitaka and whatever, or are there now?
Yes. Yes. So I very much appreciate your, and Sarah and John, everyone's energy for just continuing these Zooms and helping each other. It's wonderful. Thank you.
And this is the teaching of the Buddha about the Four Noble Truths, 3 rounds. So Buddha sent his followers to teach about Ariya Satya and Dhamma, 3 rounds. Stage by stage.
And we can't make it faster than it is. I mean, one has to hear the teachings and appreciate before there can be development of understanding.
And this is pariyati, see, firm understanding, firm confidence of the truth, anatta, no one. Let go little by little of the self, attachment and aversion and ignorance.
Yes. There's so much attachment to everything. And if the attachment is not satisfied, so to speak, then there's a lot of aversion towards what we're not getting.
And only Panya can begin to understand the subtlety of whatever is now appearing. See?
Yes, Ajahn. So once again, Ajahn, thank you so much for your time, your energy. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, and it's always my pity for the understanding of the answer of the others. So, because this is the only way to understand reality.
Just a little change of subject. I was reading the other day about Tirachana Katha, and it's translated as low talk or beastly talk. And it's about kings and robbers, ministers and armies. And of course, when I get with other people, it's often a big talk about what's going on in the world and what the politicians are doing, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes when I come away from a talk like that, I sometimes think of you, Ajahn, and I say to myself, Ajahn would never involve herself in discussion like this. So I appreciated finding that in the dictionary, those two words. But and now it's like now trying to be more careful about what comes out of my mouth. But again, there's no control over it. Sometimes if I'm in the situation, we just talk about all sorts of things, and then I come away and think, well, that's rubbish talk. What's the point of it? Be far more beneficial to discuss Dhamma with people. But you know that's by conditions. It can't be controlled. That's what is.
Because it's no one, and it's only Panya which can understand that.
Yes, Ajahn. Yes.
And I think that when we compare or think, well, this person wouldn't indulge in this kind of talk or whatever, actually, firstly, we don't know, and B, what is the citta now? And perhaps the difference, if you really want to make one, is I think that for some people, like Ajahn, if it happens, it's by conditions. If there's dosa, it's by conditions. If there's useless talk, it's by conditions. It's all gone. It's all anatta. Just whatever arises by conditions. So why stress about it? Why go on thinking and worrying about what was said, what was done, what citta arose? Because that is all the story of me. Actually, it's all gone. So what about just understanding now? Because it has to be like that.
That's a good reminder, Sarah, because in the last short while, maybe a week, it's when I come away and I have thought like that, well, it's gone. And maybe the fact that I've thought, well, that's useless, and not stressing about it so much anymore, maybe a condition for the future, who knows. But also I think it came up on Saturday, this, Ajahn said something about have compassion for their ignorance instead of blaming them. And it was talking about how we often blame other people or say they're doing the wrong thing. And I thought that was a really good comment. Just have compassion for their ignorance instead of blaming them. So I know,
like in,
go on.
I was going to say it's the same like in the examples Betty gave of when others
Yeah.
and have no interest or just have strong ideas of control or practice or whatever. How about just having understanding and kindness and compassion, because it's just the way it is.
Yes,
Or by conditions.
I was actually thinking of what Betty had said, because I thought it's similar. Because sometimes there are opportunities to bring up something about the Dhamma, but most people just brush it aside, you know, and they don't want to hear. So it's probably best just, okay, that's the way it is. Just let life take its course, I suppose.
I'll interject a little bit here. It's usually they who bring up the questions of the Dhamma, because if I sense a person's not interested, I don't talk to them about it. But my daughters will, or my son will bring up a question of the Dhamma, and so then I'll try to explain according in terms of the teachings, and they'll always come back with you have to do something. You can't just rely on conditions. You've got to do something. And you know, so this is the problem. This is and it's true. It's much better. This is a very important teaching. Much better to have a government for them, compassion for them, in their lack of understanding. And so, because there is a small sense of compassion, I want to be able to explain it better. And it's not always, I'm not always able to do that, especially with a monk, because monks automatically think they know more than a lay person anyway. So.
And I think as regards our own shortcomings and tendencies to frivolous and useless talk or thoughts and so forth, it's the same situation. It's just by conditions, and we can, I mean, it's helpful perhaps to acknowledge that it is what it is, but not with the idea that it shouldn't be like that, for example, or it could be different, if only, because then it's drifting into the,
like, you know, for instance, sometimes I'll listen to YouTube and I'll listen to the news, and there'll be some people coming on, and I notice in the United States, I'm sure perhaps in other countries, the constant use of these 4-letter swear words with every sentence. In other words, you get people who can't make a sentence without uttering one of those words, or 2 of those words, or 3, whatever. And it seems that this is increasing a lot, as well as other practices which are totally immoral. But anyway,
it's a trend, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very definitely a trend, and
very noticeable.
You kind of feel that you would love to be able to talk to some of these people, but you know, there's no conditions for you to talk to them. They're in YouTube. So
yes, well, in Australia, it's even on you know, the broadcast TV channels.
I think so too. In the States, all over. Yeah, that
just seems to be
constant use
common.
of these words. That brings up the word that Azita found about low talk.
And I've thought about this language situation, because they were discussing it and saying, oh, you know, it's the way it's said, it can be okay, it is acceptable. But then I thought about, you know, the further we get away from the Buddhist teachings, I think the messier the world we live in is going to become. You know, the more that respect and compassion and loving kindness kind of disappears.
Yeah.
And it's all about me.
That's right.
I think we can just expect that things will get worse and worse.
Oh yeah, they're going to get a lot worse before they get any better.
Yeah.
And that's true. And the more you hear about things like woke all these other things, and that men can be women, and women can be men, blah, blah, blah. You know, the more you know, you kind of, it's like morality's going out the window. So
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, indeed.
so it will get worse. It will get worse. I'm thankful I'm living here so far, anyway. But then, you know, in the schools, they're teaching all this stuff in the schools all over the place. So,
but then ultimately, it doesn't matter what's happening around us in terms of things getting worse or people having
right,
more.
you're absolutely right. On a conventional sense, things are getting worse.
It doesn't
But-
really. The fact is, that it annoys us. We're judgmental about it.
Right. And
We
we
would
should
rather it
do
wasn't
stuff.
that way. All these things, but that's our problem. It's not. The problem is not what other people are doing.
Yeah, it's our problem being upset with it, having dosa about it.
Well said, Jonathan. Thank you. Well done.
Betty, I'm just thinking of you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I was just thinking of there's nothing to do. Don't do anything. And I think it is very difficult to explain that to others, to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because one of the things we're talking about is there is no practice. And we can equate that with meditation because that's the way it's in connection with Buddhism. That's what
Right. That's what most
practice has come to mean, meditation or other ritual type things. And then people say, well, reading and discussing and, you know, listening to your tapes, that's doing something. But I think the doing something is really not doing, you know, a practice or something that you specifically believe will quickly lead to more understanding. And letting it flow. I didn't say that very well, I don't
But
think.
then if you
Letting
say,
it flow
all right,
naturally.
but if you say right now, for instance, okay, I'm going to listen to Dhamma at 7:30 in the morning, whatever time it is where you are, I don't know. But here we start here at 7:30 in the morning on Monday. And if it's done with the idea that that's by conditions, that there's this virya to go listen or so forth, then that's okay. As long as there's the understanding there that the conditions the conditions exist for going to turning on the computer and listening and so forth, whatever things you're going to
Yeah,
do.
I agree with that. I think that that's very true. And it's I just try to I've often tried to think about what's a better way to talk to people about this.
Yeah.
Well, I was also thinking about Betty's situation, and I think the real answer is to any such suggestions that are made by other people that more understanding would help.
Yeah.
And I think that's as much as one can say, really, because other than that, you tend to get into the realm of doing this or that,
That's
listening
right.
to more talks,
And
reading more
weeks ago-
sutras, etc.
Yes, you do.
But the crux of the whole matter is understanding and how it is developed,
right.
and what are the conditions for it to be developed.
Yeah.
And it always comes back to conditions anyway. They say you can't just rely on conditions. Well, understanding, the development of understanding requires the right conditions. Obviously,
right.
it can't be forced. And I think it's direct the discussion to that topic rather than the other kinds of gusala or agusala. And
Or
it
talking
gets
about
to the nub of the
what
problem.
happens in a moment.
That's
Although that probably
wise
should be
answer,
later.
Jonathan. I think that's right. talking about conditions and directing it towards the development of understanding. Yeah, thank you.
And I think also what we discussed at the beginning is relevant. For example, the other day on Saturday, a friend mentioned that when we talk about not practicing, not doing, not meditating, whatever, but from her point of view, listening like now is a kind of practice, or reading, or like Betty said, turning on the recording at a certain time. So actually the teaching's much more subtle, because the right listening is not about from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock,
Right.
but what about this moment? Is it kusala? Is there any understanding? Like we said, like I said at the beginning about the voice of another and the wise attention. Is it wise attention now or unwise attention? Like if someone's talking about all kinds of what Zita would refer to as the low talk or animal talk. What about the attention now? Is there right listening, right study, even at that moment? So it comes back to a moment. Whilst we think in terms of a situation, listening to the tape or following the Zoom or people talking nonsense, it will never lead to understanding. It has to come back to the reality at this moment. So it's not the activity, but the attention. And as someone may say, well, even in the temple or the meditation center, there can be moments of wise attention. But when there's the trying to focus on a particular object with the idea it will bring more understanding, this is the wrong path, because it's not wise attention at that moment of trying or focusing. Just like now, if there's trying to focus on visible object or trying to understand pariyatti now, it's not wise attention. So it is very subtle, but it has to be the understanding of the citta at this very moment, no matter whether one's with the person who's not following what one's saying, or whether it's now or any time.
It's only really the person who's talking in this situation who will know, unless we're talking about meditation practice and the like, but it's so subtle.
And it always comes back to the citta at this very moment, kusala sila or akusala sila right now.
Trying, yeah.
Mostly akusala sila even now, even while listening.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Just a few minutes left, so perhaps Ajahn would like to add more before we finish.
We live in the world of ignorance, right? And when there is some understanding, there can be a moment of sharing with the others, because it's so very precious. But not everyone would like to have right understanding, but it's so precious that even it's not talking about Dhamma at all, but what is there can be questioned to lead to think about Dhamma. For example, if they have the idea of practicing, going somewhere, meditating, and so on, the best thing is not our own understanding, but what about them, to begin to consider and to understand whether there is understanding or no understanding at all, by some question like, if what is the meaning of practice, and so on. And when they talk about it, there can be a moment of asking some word for them to think about, to consider, so they can share and we can share whether what is the word of truth and what is the word of Buddha. I think that let them have their own considering about what is said. Or if we just tell them, they cling to the idea so much. But when someone is asked to think about what is that, if they know, like meditate, what does it mean? And if we don't use the word meditate or meditation at all, what is the purpose of doing so? It's doing, or it's understanding the truth of what is there. And if they think they can do, how can they do to that which is there appearing already and in truth gone already. So if we care or think about the listener's understanding, we have to be patient enough not to just talk about the truth because they are not ready yet to understand what is true or not. But if they think that they know, please, what is that? So that we can add some point that they begin to understand whether it is right understanding or no understanding at all. Let them judge so we can share with the question and answer, like exchanging one's idea and what is true and what is the word of Buddha. If it's not true, what did Buddha say? And I think that it can help them little by little to think, not to just follow. So we think about the other's own benefit, like understanding what is there now. Can it be understood? What is the truth of it? Are they the same, the seeing, and that which appears, and so on? So the understanding of Dhamma can begin anytime. Yesterday we have lunch with someone who is interested in the teachings with with a son, and we just talk about it, and he just play with the cat and so on. But at lunch we talk about other things, and then I ask about the test and so on. Bring it to be object of asking and thinking, considering whether they know anything about it or not, to let them realize that actually there are more to learn, to understand about that which is there appearing. So I think that it depends on the listeners or the person we are talking about their own interests and their own character and their own accumulation and so on. By learning so, we can talk about what that can be interesting to think about the truth, little by little, as much as we can do. That's why usually I don't talk about anything for them, which is so very difficult, but to ask about that person's idea of thinking about what is there, whether it's true or not, whether it's real or not, what is real at this moment, and so on. Little by little, not saying that it's Dhamma or this is what Buddha taught, but about the truth of that very moment. That's the way to lead them to have interest in understanding the truth of what is there and who's who, like Buddha said about the truth of what is there. Who else? Just talk about no one there at all. Just talk about doing something and so on. All depends on condition with metta. Has to be very patient too, to help anyone to think about the very subtle reality, whether it's there arising or whether it's there falling away and so on, little by little. And may I say, Swadika.
So, Dikajan.
Thank you so much, China John. That was so helpful.
Sawasdee Kaptan Ajahn. Thank you very
Sarah
much,
and
Ajahn.
John and everybody.
กราบเท้าท่านอาจารย์ค่ะ